Welcome to Bunzl Canada's webinar on complying with Ontario's new employee washroom cleaning rules. My name is Margot Hunnessett, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Bunzl Canada, and it's a pleasure to have all of you join us today. I will be hosting today's discussion. We expect just a little bit of housekeeping here. We expect the masterclass to run for approximately 20 minutes. All of the attendees have been placed on mute and your cameras are turned off. If you have any questions at any point during the webinar, just submit them using the Q&A feed within the webinar platform. And you will have an opportunity to get responses to those questions, as we do have an open Q&A with our experts at the end of the session today. And finally, the webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on Bunzl Canada's YouTube channel and also shared with all webinar attendees. So before we jump into our discussion today, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our guest speakers. First, we have Kristen Honorato. Kristen is a certified registered safety professional with workplace safety and prevention services. She has extensive experience with workplace health and safety compliance, I should say, and she specializes in interpreting legislation and guiding organizations through regulatory changes. Kristen is going to bring us some very practical insights on Bill 190 and OHSA requirements and how to help businesses understand enforcement obligations and maintain safe and compliant workspaces. A little bit more about workplace safety and prevention services. It's a partner in Ontario's Occupational Health and Safety System, which includes the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, along with the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, or WSIB, and 6 health and safety associations. We also have joining us today our very own Bruce Ferguson. Bruce brings over 30 years of experience in the cleaning and hygiene industry. He's the Senior National Account Executive with Bunzl Cleaning and Hygiene and has a deep focus on facility cleaning, maintenance, and compliance. Bruce specializes in developing innovative programs backed by a SIMS certified framework to deliver custom cleaning solutions that meet the needs of both local and national clients. Bruce's expertise spans strategic account management, regulatory compliance, and operational efficiency, and he is a trusted advisor to facility managers all across the country. So welcome, Kristen and Bruce. We so appreciate your being here today, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. So today, we're going to talk about a lot. In fact, we've got a lot to cover in the time that we've got. First, we'll explore what has led to changes related to employee washroom cleaning within Ontario's Occupational Health and Safety Act, including Bill 190, which you may have heard of. Sorry about that. We're also going to explain the changes that you should have already started implementing and what changes are going to take effect in just a few more months. Then we'll break down the legislation itself to understand the elements that make up the new washroom cleaning mandates. And we'll look at how those 2 new elements work to drive compliance and avoid work orders and further enforcement. So for those of you joining us from outside of Ontario, you may be wondering how relevant this is to you. And so we're going to provide some insight there as well. And then lastly, we'll offer some guidance on how to provide clean and sanitary washroom facilities to your employees through standards-based cleaning practices. And we'll also take a look at best practices for recording employee washroom cleanings, both conveniently and reliably. So let's get into today's conversation. And first of all, let's start with you, Kristen. Thank you so much again for joining us. I think it would be helpful to start the conversation today with some clarification around exactly what has happened, because people are hearing different names and different bills and legislations, regulations, mandates. It can all be very confusing. So I know we can count on you to enlighten us.
All right, thanks, Margot, and thanks so much for having me join you today. So just a little bit of background, I guess, around the legislation. So about a year ago this month, Bill 90, also known as Working for Workers Act 5, amended the Ontario Occupational Health and Safety Act, and it expanded some legislative requirements that help protect workplaces, both in person, virtually, and sort of remote as well. This is part of a series of Working for Workers Acts that have been announced. So there's kind of 7 of them now, and this is number 5 that we're kind of focusing on today. So some of the changes that happened with Working for Workers Act 5 specifically, they changed the definition of workplace violence or workplace harassment, allowed for some electronic postings of Occupational Health and Safety Act documentation, health and safety policies, and things like that. But probably more importantly for today, they also made a change around mandating that washroom facilities are kept clean and sanitary, and also added a requirement to ensure that there are records available to show that these cleaning efforts have been maintained. So these changes were definitely driven through industry. So specifically, these changes were driven because of unsanitary conditions, specifically in construction sites or construction environments. But then legislation brought in to include not only construction sites, but also all employers that follow the Occupational Health and Safety Act as well. Definitely help support, again, ensuring that our washrooms are maintained in clean and sanitary conditions, and definitely help support that dignity and comfort for our workers, regardless of whether or not they're in a factory, in an office, on a construction site, etc. So part of the act that got changed again was around the clean and sanitary conditions. They also then included a regulation that really talks about and supports that record keeping, having records available for that transparency to our workers.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying sort of the what and the why. Now I think we need to talk about the when, because I think that's what a lot of our clients are very concerned about.
Yeah, so the when is kind of in 2 parts. So the change to the Act actually was implemented in July of 2025, so July 1st, 2025. That is actually when the washroom cleanliness expectation went into the Act, so ensuring that we've got that, again, clean and sanitary condition. Within the Act, they are also now referencing the ability to, again, document, provide a log of that cleaning, so that record of cleaning. So kind of, again, 2 stages. So right now, that clean and sanitary condition is a requirement with some logging expectations. And then as of January 1st, 2026, so just, again, a couple of months from now, there is going to be that expectation to have, again, records of that logging available to your workers, making sure that they're posted at the facilities, making sure, again, that they're available for people to view as proof that those cleanings have actually occurred.
Oh, we seem to have a delay on our slide coming up there. So, Kristen, there isn't anything in the legislation that actually specifies what cleaning looks like. So, can you clarify how employers should interpret that language, the language that's used in Bill 190?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it really is interpretation. So the legislation simply says they must be maintained in a clean and sanitary condition. They have not given any extra around the definition of clean or sanitary. So really it is going to be up to that expectation or interpretation of the workplace. So when we think about that, again, maintained in clean and sanitary condition, lots of generalities around those words, maintain, clean, sanitary, but we really have those assumptions around what's appropriate. So is there appropriate sanitary products available? So is there toilet paper? Is there paper towel? Is there a hand dryer? Is there soap? Is there sanitizer if there's no running water, maybe at a porta potty or something? We also think about maintain. So are sinks working? Are toilets flushable? Is there no clogs? What does that look like? So again, as much as legislation doesn't actually define the words clean and sanitary, it really is kind of the employer to understand what reasonable expectations would look like around sort of that verbiage.
So it's more around the functional expectation.
Yeah, so the ministry can only enforce clean and sanitary conditions. And again, we're really focusing on is it well maintained? Is it usable? Is it properly stocked is it, in that clean and sanitary condition for your worker to use.
Right. So, what are the expectations on reporting cleanings?
Yeah, so within the Act, there was also a reference to a new regulation that was created. So that regulation is really where we're finding out the data or the details around what the recording or record keeping expectations are. So the records need to be posted in a conspicuous place near the washroom facility that the record pertains to. That's likely going to come to the attention of a worker. So likely we would interpret that the inspector would expect to see it sort of right at the front door of the washroom, maybe right on the inside wall. But again, somewhere where it's going to come to the attention of the worker. Legislation also does say that those records can be posted electronically. So electronic records are more than appropriate, as long as the employer can show proof that all workers have been trained on how to access those records. So again, we've got to have that provability, ensuring that workers have that ability to access those electronic records and understand how to do that. So the records need to have the date and time of the last 2 most recent cleanings available. Not required to list the name of the person that did the cleaning, but the date and the time. And again, a record of the last 2 cleanings that had occurred at the facility or the washroom facility.
Okay. So thank you, Kristen. I guess we're going to discuss adopting different types of recording and reporting solutions and provide a little guidance on that later. But what's stopping an employer from just ignoring those responsibilities and, maybe posting documentation that, makes it appear that the washrooms have been cleaned to a regular schedule? Can you explain how the 2 separate amendments are working together to promote this compliance?
Yeah, so ultimately nothing is stopping employers from not doing this other than maybe fear of not complying with legislation. But it is important to understand that the 2 pieces of legislation, so the change to the Act and the newly developed regulation, work in tandem. So they are separate, but they work in tandem to support one another, or sort of kind of support each other. So the fact that you have a good record, whether it's legitimate or not, does not negate the fact that you need to have a clean and sanitary washroom facility. So again, like a facility or company could show like a perfect record with the name, or sorry, the date, the last 2 recordings, the time, etc. But if the washrooms are still not maintained well, so they're found to be unsanitary, not maintained, not clean, etc., they could still receive an order on the Act portion. So the fact that they weren't clean, they weren't sanitary, etc. Similarly, an inspector could go into a workplace and the washroom could be beautiful. It could be sparkling, clean, and perfect. But if they don't have a record, they could still get an order on the lack of record. So it really is a both. Washrooms have to be that maintained in clean and sanitary conditions, and you have to have a record of, and they again can be enforced kind of separately. So you really have to kind of think about that. So
there's no either or here.
No, they are intended to work together. The Act is referencing expectations within the regulation, so it is a true like tandem piece of legislation.
Great. So from an enforcement perspective, what should employers expect in that regard? Could you share some examples of how inspections might be approached?
Yeah, so this is new legislation to us. So we haven't actually seen a lot of orders being written against this legislation quite yet. But companies could expect that enforcement would likely come in sort of means of an order from the ministry. So typically, again, if a ministry inspector is writing an order, they will write an order against the piece of legislation that they think is being contravened. And then they will give some narrative around maybe what the concerns were. So you may get an order against like section 23.1 as an example. That's the constructor side there around cleaning your washrooms. And then the narrative might say washroom is found, in unusable conditions, or washroom is found missing certain products, or washroom is found with, sinks not being well maintained, etc. So the order again is against the legislation, and then often the ministry will provide some narrative around what the concern actually was. So classically, when an inspector comes into a facility, if they're choosing to write an order, you can get sort of 3 different kinds of orders. So one of the orders is considered an administrative or time-bound, sort of depending on the verbiage you'd like to use, style order. Likely these orders would be around some of those documentation or those record keeping. So this is when an inspector may find that you're not following an administrative task. They may give you X amount of months, maybe weeks, whatever that time is, to start complying. So by the end of November, you must ensure that records are being maintained, posted, etc. You also may get something that we call a comply forthwith order. So these are sort of orders that may be associated with something that they consider either low risk or easier, quicker to fix. So potentially an inspector could come in, they could see a washroom that was not cleaned properly or not well sanitized, etc., and say, like, by the time you leave your facility, you need to make sure this washroom is cleaned, or you need to make sure this washroom's in a usable condition.
Stock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is the last kind. So the last order is that stop work order. These are typically done for more significant concerns. So maybe, again, an inspector might go into a facility where the washrooms are not usable at all, none of the sinks are running or none of the toilets are flushing, etc. They could then write a stop work order that says, like, you can no longer use this facility, you can no longer use this area until everything's fixed. In those cases, they'll come back, they'll make sure that the corrections are made as required, and then sort of release the facility back to the employer.
So, Kristen, employers in Ontario must now comply with this new legislation. But can you comment on why these changes to Ontario's Occupational Health and Safety Act may, how would this potentially affect our clients that are outside of Ontario, employers that are outside of Ontario?
Yeah, so as much as legislation is different province to province, legislation provincially also does typically maintain fairly consistent. So Ontario does not tend to be a leader in legislative change. We're almost kind of like that middleman when it comes to changes. So we'll often watch other provinces kind of enforce legislation first. Classically, BC, Alberta are typically first to kind of pick up legislation. We'll almost gather it in the middle, and then you will often see some of the other provinces pick it up in some capacity later as well. So again, it may not look the exact same as it does in Ontario legislation, but there's a very good chance that all provinces will at some point adopt some kind of legislation surrounding washroom facilities and maintaining them properly. So really good to kind of capture what Ontario is doing to prepare for what could be happening in other provinces moving forward.
Okay, and we can see that there are already some standards in effect and guidance in effect and requirements in effect in different provinces across the country. So thank you, Kristen. It's time to bring Bruce into the conversation. And Bruce, we're going to ask for some guidance from you here on the issue of ambiguity. So, we just talked about what is considered clean and sanitary, and that it's up to the discretion and the interpretation of the inspectors. But can you explain for us, how can businesses ensure that their cleaning programs actually do meet those best practice standards?
Thank you very much, Margot, and thanks, Kristen. That was excellent. I think every time I go through this, every time I hear something about the new bill, I learn something myself as well too. And I do always find it very interesting that we need legislation for employers to want to create a clean and healthy work environment for their employees. But hey, at least we have the legislation now, which is going to help drive us towards that. So I think Sandra's matter, of course, is keeping things clean and sanitary keeps our employees healthy, right? We know that washrooms can be a significant contributor to health issues just by the sheer aspect of how they're used and what they're used for, right? So very importantly, in being able to meet this legislation and meet the requirements of this legislation, it's going to be very important for employers to have very robust cleaning standards. Fortunately, you don't need to create these yourself. These already exist in many areas. One that's very well recognized out there is SIMS, which is the cleaning industry management standard, which was developed by ISSA, the International Sanitation Supply Association, which really does help to build cleaning programs, right, that do help you drive towards that cleaning for health mentality, right? So not just making it look clean, but making sure that you do have processes in place so that you are creating evidence-based, effective and focused cleaning practices that will, help achieve the results that you're looking for, both from a visible standpoint, but very importantly, from a health standpoint as well, too.
That's great, Bruce. Now, we've talked a lot about sort of the cleaning and making sure that it's done and making sure that it's done effectively, but let's turn our attention now to the reporting element. What are some of the limitations of physical record keeping that's quite common in a lot of facilities?
Yeah, interesting. We're all very familiar because we've seen these for a number of years. And kudos to everybody out there and employers out there that do this because understanding the importance of letting people know, right, that the washroom is being looked after is paper records that are located somewhere in the washroom, in the back of the door, on a wall, in a sleeve of some sort. So from a positive standpoint, it at least does identify, potentially identify that the washroom was, when it's cleaned and when the last times it was serviced, right? Letting their employees and visitors to the building know that as well too. Challenge is they're easy to overlook, right? They're very easy to tamper with or backfill as well too, right? Seeing it where somebody goes in and just fills in a whole bunch of them at the same time. It can be very inconsistent across sites and very inconsistent formats, especially even just across washrooms. And especially just even across washrooms within a facility itself, right? Let alone if you're somebody who manages washrooms across the country. So it can be very limiting from that perspective, and sometimes illegible, tough to read, and easy to remove as well too. Easy to be tampered with, not just by say somebody who's backfilling it, but somebody to actually remove it from the washroom as well too. Right, so moving into more of the digital side of things and looking at maintaining from a digital perspective, this not only gives you more of a tamper evident, and we say a timestamp of when a washroom was clean, right? But every time that you do enter into a digital system, you also do create, to use that term again, a timestamp or of activity that took place. Right, you can gain through your portals, and we're going to run through a little bit of demonstration on this as well too. Of a particular program that we work with, which is CleanWatch, but you can gain instant access to the cleaning histories. You can create standardized forms, a very standardized appearance across all of your washrooms, whether it's in the same building or it's across the provinces or across the country. It gives you actionable data, right? It gives you data that tells you when washrooms were cleaned. If you do choose to use it to be able for people to report cleaning concerns or when request cleaning services. Right, you can start to use that to correlate data to adjust your cleaning and be very proactive to your cleaning as to more prescriptive as to when you should be in a certain area at a certain time. Based on the traffic and the volumes of the area. It's very hygienic and durable, right? Staff don't have to touch it, right? You think about what staff are doing in the washrooms, and then they have to go and they have to touch this piece of paper, and many people do. We know how things spread much more prevalently. We were aware of that after COVID. People became very aware of that. And privacy controls, right? It restricts personal info while still meeting, very important, those visibility requirements as far as what
so
the last two times it
the name of someone who cleaned the space, for example.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I guess accessing that information would be very challenging if you had to maintain all of those records through multiple facilities.
Yeah, and at the same time as well too, just thinking about that is to be, when inspectors come in and they're going to want to see what you're doing. Well, sometimes it can be very difficult to do that through a big file full of papers with a bunch of writing on it. Where you can create reports and generate information that's very relevant, right, to what you are doing to maintain your washrooms in a very hygienic fashion.
So you're going to tell us a little more about CleanWatch.
Yeah, a little bit about CleanWatch. So CleanWatch is a program that we work with. Importantly, from the legislation perspective, it's going to present the latest to cleanings to workers, and not just to workers, right? It's very important to your workers and to your employees, but depending on your type of environment, this can be utilized to show this, right, to your patrons that are frequenting your facilities or your homes and using your washrooms as well, too, showing your care to their health in this particular case. Store full-time stamped history for supervisors to be able to go in and easily review. Enable, and we talked about a second ago, was enable proof on demand for inspections as well, right? All your fingertips and very easy to access. I think now, yes, now we're going to just run into actually a very quick demo that we'll walk through on what that actually looks like. All right, so let's take a look at the actual system and how it does work. We'll start from the employee's side. Employee would open up the app. This is the employee providing the service, would log in using a code. You'll see they have the option here to scan a QR code of the location. This makes sure they're in the right location. Click on that. They will scan the QR code. And again, importantly, this is the employee that is actually performing the service. Now they have the option here just to submit the service, or they also have the option here to be able to add an image and add a comment, right? For example, right, maybe they're responding to an alert where a garbage can was overflowing, so they want to take a picture of the garbage can to show that they changed the garbage, right? Make a quick note, right, that they completed the cleaning and that they changed the garbage bag, and so they've solved that particular issue with that washroom, and then they will hit submit. Once they hit submit, right, that is sent to the cloud, if you want to call it that, and that timestamp and data is recorded. So form is submitted, right? All set and ready to go. The next piece of it is, so especially in relation to Bill 190, right, is now what does a employee or a visitor, for example, even so, but an employee, what do they do when they want to see when the washroom was last cleaned? So they're not going to be in the app. When they scan the QR code, it takes them somewhere different and shows them those last 2 times you'll see at the top there. That's the last 2 times the washroom was serviced. They also have the option at this particular point as well too, and this is optional for you to set up for the employer to set up is that you can have where they can actually request service as well. And you can customize what you want them to be able to request, right? For example, here there's odor concern, never happens in a washroom, right? But say there's a foul odor, hit submit. Now what happens with that is they've been able to look to see when the last time the washroom was cleaned, but they've also now submitted a service request that has gone to a pre-designated email or phone from a text perspective, right? For somebody to be able to action that. Now, from the employer side, being able to go in and see this information, right? All the different information we've collected as far as cleanings, as far as alerts go and requests for service, right? The employer can log in and now go to find that data, right? And potentially use the data to adjust cleaning programs and adjust the service requirements in different areas, right? So when you go into the portal, right, you click on reports, you look at the service history. Service history will automatically default to 1 week. That can be adjusted and changed to longer time frames, shorter time frames if you so desire. You'll have some snapshots and graphs that will allow you to see, very quickly as an overview is where did I provide the most service, right? Which employees were providing the most service, for example. But more importantly, or as importantly as that, you do have the detail in line by line. Every time something is entered into the system, it is a timestamp that is recorded, right? With that ability to export that into various formats, but Excel, very importantly, for if you want to slice and dice the data in any way, right? To help you to understand, is there something I need to change and how I'm approaching the service in certain areas so I can improve the service and reduce the amount of alerts that I'm getting, right? So that's where that data can really help us to be very prescriptive in our cleaning. Another area we can look is going to look at the service comments. This is where a staff member who was performing cleaning may have taken a picture or made a comment. We can go in and take a look for any pictures that are there, right? Providing that proof of clean as well too for what was done. In addition to any comments that they made, maybe they made a comment about something wasn't working. Maybe they made a comment that that they performed a certain service, right? This is where we can go to grab that particular pieces of information. And again, that can be exported as well into the various formats. Moving in and going into public alerts, another very important section for us to look at. If you remember when the employee who was using the washroom went in to look to see when the last 2 times the washroom was clean, they had the option to be able to request service under various different service options. And this is where that is picked up, right? This can help us to identify who is responding to public alerts the most. But very importantly is where are our top 10 alerted areas. In this particular case, we have a couple of areas set up, but where are our top 10 alerted areas? And what are the top 5 issues that are being alerted? So if we pre-set up for for people to be able to request service, depending on what those items were, is what the top 5, right, that we're seeing, right, can help us to zero in on where we might need to improve. And again, we have that ability to export this information line by line. You want to call it a flat file is what we'd call that, into Excel, right? So we can slice and dice and really get prescriptive again in looking at, is there, how do we improve on this, or what areas can we improve on? From a perspective of reducing alerts, right? And which means that we are actually improving our service and improving the cleanliness of our washrooms. All right, so that was just to run through the demo very quickly. Again, it's that digital system that allows us to capture the information, timestamp everything, right? Which not only allows us to report back as we need to, right, to inspectors, we can report internally. That's what we're doing for employees and what we're doing for visitors. And we can utilize that information again, like I say, if we're getting a lot of requests for service at a certain amount of time, it allows us to very prescriptively go back and look and say, hey, maybe we should be in cleaning this washroom at a particular time, right, as opposed to the times that we're actually doing it. And again, how it does work. Now, if you actually want to try this yourselves as well, too, one way to do this is this QR code is actually active. So if you have your phones handy, and you'll just sort of scan it and click on it, you'll see get to see the actual last 2 times this particular washroom was cleaned. In addition, you will actually visually see below the selections that are available for you to request service. And those are all customizable too, depending on your washroom, right? Depending on what you have in the washroom and what you want people to be able to request as well too. It can be as simple as you want or as detailed as you want as well. And again, from a training perspective, for people to know how to use it, which was very important as far as the act goes as well too. The instructions are all just right here. This is an example of maybe what a sticker would look like, or a poster of some sort that would look like that you would put in the washroom. Reminds your staff of how to use it, right? In addition to reminds the public on how to access the information as well too. And so just to close this off as well too, is understanding that there is a grace period to implementing the reporting aspect before it's going to become a requirement up until January 1st. And again, you scan this QR code to give you the opportunity to register for free service for the rest of 2025. So basically get yourself in a position where you can hit the ground running on come January 1st. Your staff can be trained, they can be up to speed. You can have the procedures and protocols in place that you require, have the reporting in place, have all of the QR codes in place to be able to, like I say, hit the ground running come January 1st. Come January 1st, the annual payment is $960, no setup fee. So really easy to get started with this and to put a really robust system in place that's going to allow you to, to meet the legislation and, at the end of the day, hopefully improve the results of what we're providing for our employees and our visitors in our washrooms and our buildings. And I think that's about it. Anything else to add there, Kristen?
I will just say I did get a couple of questions sent to me prior to Bruce. I could certainly go through just those handful of questions that were given, at least on the legislative side. So one of the questions that got submitted was certainly just around what is considered a washroom. So just to remind that there absolutely is now included in the Occupational Health and Safety Act a definition of what a washroom facility is. So basically, washroom facility is now defined as a toilet facility, cleanup facility, urinal, shower, or other similar facility, but does not include an eye wash station or an emergency shower. So again, these are sort of considered your classic washroom facilities where you would expect people to be able to clean up and use the washroom facilities, not for emergency purposes. Another question that was given to me was around who does this apply to? So there has been some questions around who does this legislation apply to? Quite simply, it applies to everybody that follows the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So again, this has been included in the Act. So if you're a provincial employer or a provincial workplace that follows the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there is expectation that you'll be following not only the Act, but the new regulation that has applied as well. There was a question that came in just around fines that could happen for non-compliance. So we do intend or expect that most of the compliance will be done around orders for this one. I don't expect to see a lot of monetary fines for this kind. I think it will be order-based. However, just from the extremes of legislation, do remember that if you had an incident that did result in serious injury, critical injury, death, fatality, there are some maximums outlined in legislation. So an individual could be fined up to a maximum of of $500,000 if convicted. Corporations can be fined up to $2 million if convicted. But again, those would be some sort of extreme maximums from a financial perspective. Do anticipate that most of the enforcement of this legislation will certainly be order-based. So I think Margot is back at least. So I can probably stop talking, and we did our best. You guys were good.
Well, we love to have a good technical outage right in the middle of a webinar. But thank you very much for pinch hitting there. Kristen and Bruce, we really appreciate your time today. That concludes our Q&A and our masterclass today. Again, we appreciate your attendance, and thank you again to Karen Oronato and Bruce Ferguson, both of you, for sharing your knowledge and expertise today. If you are interested in reviewing your washroom cleaning program and you'd like to speak to a SIM certified expert, please reach out to Bruce. You see his contact information on screen, and he'll be very happy to assist you. So thank you all for attending, and have a great day.